We're so excited about our podcast this week. We're coming to you live from the CES show floor, right in the main lobby. We're going to be talking with leading journalists about the exciting trends and products we're seeing all over CES. So be sure to download our episodes on January 9th, 10th, and 11th to hear firsthand about the future of technology, what it'll look like, and what we're seeing all over CES. Enjoy today's episode, live from Las Vegas.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to CTA Stage, and welcome to CES 2018. I'm Tyler Suiters with the Consumer Technology Association. We are the owner and producer of CES, and with me, 5 top journalists who are covering CES this year and have covered them in the past. And I will go in order, starting at my immediate left. And if you need a cheat sheet, right behind everybody, here's who everybody is. Mark Spoonauer is editor-in-chief with Tom's Guide. Matt Swider is senior mobile editor with Tech Radar. Behind him, Joe Cox with What HiFi. All the way over is Dave Kender, editor-in-chief with Reviewed.com. And finally, Laurie Jennings, who is with us from Good Housekeeping. Hey, everybody, thank you. How are your feet feeling?
Hi.
Great to be here.
Laurie, since you're the farthest away, let's start with you. Let's dive right in.
And I'm a little outnumbered.
What has, because you're wearing white pants, yes, exactly. What has got your eye right now? What's the thing that is top of mind here at the show for you?
Well, I think for everyone, it's voice everything, all the time. Voice. But I was just walking through the LG exhibit, and I really sort of felt mesmerized and just can't wait to go back there and get immersed in that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Great answer. Dave, please.
For years, all of these companies have been making stuff that can talk to each other, and now they actually have to do it. And so getting this morass of connected devices to actually work in a way that's meaningful for consumers, that's what we're looking at.
Excellent. And you're seeing evidence of that so far?
We're seeing efforts towards that, yeah.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Hard to judge in a short time. Joe?
Yeah, well, I think that's it. It's everything talking to each other, but of course we're talking to the products as well, which is a big thing. So the voice assistants and AI is everywhere. But as Laurie touched on, I think the LG stand's really great this year, and they've got an 8K OLED TV, which is crazy and is obviously not for today, but I think as just a spectacle is amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting that for all the innovative emerging technologies, TVs still just grab your attention like almost nothing else. Matt, how about you?
I'm definitely seeing it be a battle between Amazon and Google for smart assistants, and then Samsung's throwing its weight in there, so that's really interesting. And I saw the fingerprint sensor behind the glass for a phone for the first time. I got to test that out, and my fingerprint works, and it was really neat. So you can have an all-screen phone and your fingerprint on there right as well. So I found that to be really neat technology.
Excellent. Mark, how many shows is this for you?
More than I care to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting some gravitas
over a decade. That's my pat answer. Yeah.
A little gravitas behind what you're saying. What is it for you? What's number one?
Well, I'm actually a sucker for big screens. So whether it's like in your living room or in your car. So I don't know if you guys have been over to the North Hall, but the Byton electric vehicle, the hybrid that's coming out, the SUV. There's a 49-inch display as you walk into the car, and talk about being mesmerized. Like it doesn't sound safe. But
who cares
it's
about
really
safety?
cool in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. Like you could see your health stats. You could see the number of car crashes around you. No, I'm just kidding. But I was impressed by that. But also the LG's roll-up TV. So the rollable display, which is not in their booth. You have to get. Unfortunately, it's by appointment only. But we have something on Tom's Guide where we went behind the scenes, and you could see it rolling up 65 inches, 4K, and that sort of just feels like the future. And that's what CES is to me. The future.
Yeah. So you mentioned Byton, and that's a fine display to look at because the car will be driving itself at that point. But where are we as far as what you're seeing on self-driving vehicles? Because we've heard a lot of announcements from the major auto manufacturers, and we have 11 here at CES, about 2021 kind of being a general rollout. But we have cars on the road right now, and in the meantime, vehicle tech is already making us safe for drivers. So feel free to jump in. Where are we now, and how close are we to a major step toward what's next?
Well, we just experienced a massive snowstorm in New York City, And I think that really clearly identified some of the shortcomings because those sensors do not work when there's snow and ice and things like that on the road. And so that's for me, that's a major issue because sure, it's great in Arizona or somewhere down in California, but how is this going to work in different weather conditions? And I don't think we've answered that question yet.
Right.
I didn't even see it be able to make it around the corner in Las Vegas this morning.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, part of why Uber is busy testing self-driving in Pittsburgh, right? Hills and snow and slush and all of that. Please.
I don't cover that beat myself a lot, so if I'm talking out of my butt, please feel free to jump in and stop me. But I think what you're going to have to see is one or two states really stick their neck out on the regulatory side and embrace self-driving cars, become the test bed for the rest of the country, and then I think what you would see is some other states that have a really hot tech scene start to incorporate it one by one and until it becomes a real trend.
I feel like the good news is that at first it's happening with features, so like the auto stop and other things like that. And like I think the other part of that it's really important is to getting consumers comfortable even with the idea of a self-driving car, because I think people don't want to, give control over something that's supposed to be fun, right? But so I think part of the reason why the Byton is so interesting is like, okay, so if we get to the state where we're almost at self-driving cars, what are you going to do during your commute? Right. So some of the features are things like video conferencing or checking your health stats or entertainment, that sort of thing. So I think that's a big part of it, getting people just used to the idea of like, what would you do even if it worked the way it should? Right. And the fact that, when those questions are phrased to consumers that, do you want to give up control? The answer is going to be no. When it's phrased that 94% of car crashes that are deadly are caused by human error, do you want to change that? Oh, well, absolutely. I can't wait to get in.
I think Netflix binge watching will happen on the road when as soon as this becomes online. I'm wondering, will states support it with dedicated lanes for self-driving vehicles? I think, the infrastructure needs to be there for this to really take off, and then, assuage people's safety concerns. So, yes, they're on their own course at CES, but what will it be like when it's on the road in the public?
Joe, I want to start with you for the next question. And Laurie, you moved in this direction when you said that voice is everywhere, and that was maybe the top theme that we tracked last year at CES 2017. This year, it seems that voice is moving into AI, artificial intelligence, in some ways similar, but a clear advancement. Are you seeing AI virtually everywhere right now? Is it a fair thing to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Samsung, who always make the biggest noise at shows like this, and this year was no different. I think half their press conference was dedicated to AI or variations thereof. But a bit like with the self-driving cars, it feels like it's at a point where there's still a fair bit of work to be done behind the scenes. And what's happening here is it's about awareness, and it's about people becoming familiar with AI assistants, what they can do, what's out there, while we sort of play catch up to actually get where we need to be for everything to work. We've all probably been here in previous years where we've had smart fridges and we've had products talking to other products. That's been around for a while, but taking that next leap, the real AI leap, we're getting there, but it feels like there's still a little bit of work to be done. And I think it's about getting people comfortable with that idea and about getting people familiar with using it and using voice technology, for example.
Yeah, Mark?
Yeah, no, for me, I think we got to be careful as an industry because AI is starting to be overused a little bit. And
as a term?
Yeah.
Not as a technology?
Absolutely.
As a term, it's sort of like the new IoT. But I do feel like there are some really good examples that I've seen at this show. So, talking about Samsung, like the chip inside their 8K TV is smart enough to upscale 8K content. And I'm not sure how it works yet, but they're saying that it's going to learn based on what you watch in order to upscale content from regular HD all the way up to 8K. So obviously we have to test that out to see how it works.
That's when I put on my skeptic's hat and say, do you mean AI or do you just mean software?
Well, so where's the line? I mean, taken from a serious standpoint, Mark, where is the line between those two?
I mean,
blurred.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's very blurred. I think that AI it's a blanket term, at least in terms of marketing speak. It's a blanket term, and it's squishy. It can mean whatever you want it to mean. The two words I keep hearing over and over again are AI and blockchain, and it's just investors, just line up for stuff like that. But from my perspective, I want to get these products in the lab, test them out, see what they actually do, and see if they. sometimes I don't even care if it's doing what it says it does. Is it just better than the next product that is a little bit cheaper or a little bit more expensive because I just want to help people buy the right thing?
Right. Matt?
I think it's the difference between is that software learning and adapting to the user, or is it just software that's stagnant and it just seems smart? So is it smart or is it learning? I think that's the difference.
That's a great point. So were any of you at to take one example, the LG Press Day event? Okay, so the rollout, David and Joe, and you were there too, Mark. So they're talking about Think Technology, THINQ, for Think You, and part of the explanation is you don't have to learn your devices are learning about you, right?
There was a good example of one of their new TVs where they're integrating this AI. And so if you're talking to your TV and the Google Assistant is built in, so you can say, what's the weather today? Do I need an umbrella like later this week?
Right.
But then you can segue to like, show me the latest movies with Tom Cruise. And it uses a different interface. But what's good about this AI is that you don't have to use different wake words. It's all one system. So I feel like that's a good practical example of where AI can go.
Right.
But I do think it is really interesting in terms of how these devices are learning your behavior, and eventually you may not have to ask for the weather because it will just tell you the weather. It will know when you wake up. It'll know when to turn on your lights or dim your lights when Game of Thrones is on or whatever it happens to be. That's actually a proof. Google saw that people were dimming their lights at a certain time, and it related to Game of Thrones. And that's also the kind of data that they're collecting, which I think is amazing, that they know that about people. And it's not me telling you. It's a universal trend happening in little pieces across the country, individually.
I would love that alignment that my out of office would go up every time Game of Thrones is on for the first broadcast.
Or literally goes on automatically when you leave your office.
Yeah.
That could happen.
Well, I want to stay with you, Laurie. From a good housekeeping perspective, I feel like you have a great touch point of what consumers want, for one, and what consumers will use, number two. Where do you see where we are now and what's immediately ahead in terms of that?
Well, what we see absolutely is that consumers want something that makes sense to them, and they want it to be simple. So as soon as you have to put in extra passwords or download an app and then a password and then a verification code, and that, like, you lose people. Every step you lose more people.
Right.
And especially for a brand like us, we are mass. We speak to almost everybody in the country, mostly women, but almost every woman in the country. And they don't care about the technology at all. They could care less about technology. What they care about is it going to make me feel safer? Is it going to make my life easier? Is it going to save me time? Is it going to help me cook? Is it going to help me look after my child? Whatever it happens to be. But they don't care about technology at all. They just want things that are easier, more convenient, safer, potentially cheaper, but not even necessarily cheaper, just more benefit.
Right. So do you think that's a driver of innovation too? And Joe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, we're all touching on the same point, but I think essentially a key aspect is that this technology needs to be in lots of different products and therefore all around your home and doing lots of different things. Just talking to one speaker is okay, but it's not going to hook you. It's not going to be the game changer in your life or in your house. When it's in everything and they're talking to each other and you can tell one thing to do another thing, you can dim your lights, you can change the temperature, then you get the use cases that gets people hooked and gets people into the technology. So that's the sort of step we're taking. And then, as Matt was saying, the next step is when that technology is learning from you and you don't even have to prompt it. But I think firstly it's getting the technology in a whole suite of products, a bit like LG did, so it really makes sense to people.
Yeah, I think it was during the Samsung press conference when they were talking about helping you with your logins for all of your, and I wanted to stand up and just say, yes, that is a thing that makes people angry, and you're solving it. You can move the fridge off the stage, and all the and just focus on pain points.
Yeah.
No, I'm just going to say, like, one of the things that you saw that Amazon did during the holiday when they were selling like an Amazon Echo every second, was that they were doing a lot more bundling with other products because. And even if you don't wind up getting it, what they're trying to message to people is that if you get this, you can control that. And what we saw after the holidays is that the two most popular stories on Tom's Guide, which I think is telling, is what are the biggest Amazon Alexa skills? So what can I do with this thing? And what are the products that I can control with Google Home? So we were talking about that war between the two, and I think it's ramping up here, and you're seeing it right outside with Google Assistant.
Let's move from kind of the micro in-home experience to a bit of a more macro look. And a theme at CES 2018 that we're tracking is the idea of smart cities, right? So again, it comes into that interaction, but on a much larger scale. It's a broad term. Open question, everybody. What does it mean to you? What is a smart city? What are the benefits for us as a consumer?
Well, when I think of smart city, I almost think about a beautiful green space that you can walk around, and there are walkable, neighborly places, and it's about smart design, and not from a technology perspective, but from an urban planning perspective, to eliminate traffic, to allow people to actually meet their neighbor and talk to their neighbor, and facilitate real human interaction. And I think that's the beauty of smart cities for me personally.
Matt, do you want to jump
I
in?
would say easier commuting. That's the number one thing I see. I lived in LA for 8 years. I just moved to New York City, so both in the car and on foot. Smart cities will have to tackle that first and foremost.
I can't think of a worse city to move to for traffic. If you're leaving LA, right? There's only one place worse, right?
Right.
Well, so
traffic.
how do you see that implemented? Since it's just such a big pain point for you personally.
Right. So things like Hyperloop are, when they have announcements, that's really exciting because, that it's going to take a lot of infrastructure to really propel people forward to change their habits, and self-driving cars could play a big part in that. But like I said, you'll have to corner them off to a different lane so that they can go faster. And you encourage people to buy self-driving cars. I think that's going to take a lot of effort and on a citywide scale.
I was just going to add that I think another big aspect of smart cities, like especially when you get like 5G in place and you have cameras in more places, and just having a safer city. Like if you think about just how many people were at New Year's in New York City, and my wife and I are talking, like, would we let our kids do that, in this day and age? If it was a smart city, maybe I would, because you'll be able to respond faster. And I know people worry about surveillance, but like if you can better balance sort of this need for security and safety, for privacy, like those are the debates that we should be having now, because it is coming.
Yeah. Laurie, you wanted to jump in?
No.
Oh, I thought I saw you chomping at the bit.
Well, I was just I was just thinking about Ford and everything that Ford is doing, and just the fact that Ford does not define itself as an automaker anymore. They are a mobility company, and that includes bicycles, public transportation, sure, autonomous vehicles. But I'm still having a hard time understanding how autonomous vehicles are going to help solve issues around commuting and traffic. I think it's more about public transportation and alternative modes of transportation that might not be the car, to be honest.
Yeah, really, I would like to see some simple, low benchmarks hit in the near future with just a couple cities. I mean, traffic elimination would be great, grand vision, but just traffic mitigation by like 10%. Right? Can you cut traffic by 10% in a mid-sized city like Pittsburgh in 10 years? And prove it out, because that's how you're gonna get infrastructure investment, and that's really what's going to move the needle.
Moving to a more narrowly defined vertical, although I think this goes across the consumer and the B2B sectors, augmented reality, virtual reality. We've had buzz about one or the other at various times. Are you hearing enough, or are you seeing enough excitement about both this year that you see them merging, coming up together, or does one or another have a lead going into 2018, would you say?
Well, I would say that VR is starting to mature. Like you saw at this show with the HTC Vive Pro, but I think it's very telling that they're calling it the Pro, not just for people who have a lot of money, but also for content creators. So it's sort of like it's finding its place. At the same time, we saw at least a half dozen AR glasses at this show, and they're very early, rough stage, kind of like where VR was a few years ago. But if you think about where the industry is going, I think a lot of people like the idea of AR better, because you're not closed off from the rest of the world. You're overlaying information. So I think maybe this time next year we'll see like more promising upstarts and startups. But I think for now we saw some cool ideas at this show. So like if I'm going into a meeting and like I'm looking at someone, not only does it recognize them, it gives me their LinkedIn profile in my view. So I think that there are some exciting things, especially with AR, and I think you're going to see AR start to eclipse VR, at least in terms of the masses.
Yeah, I think it's just still that stumbling block of mass appeal, isn't it? I know I have lots of friends who've tried VR in an exhibition or through work or somehow, and I don't know anyone who hasn't loved it. But I also don't know anyone who uses it on a regular basis or owns a VR device. You know, so it feels like.
Do you think that's a content issue or a price issue?
That was my question was content or hardware, right?
Yeah, I think it's
Or experience.
It's a 360.
Use case.
Yeah, it's everything. You know, the hardware is too expensive, and were you to buy it, then there isn't much content. So you know, it still feels at an early stage. I've got 3D in my head as if it's going to, you know, the worry that it never quite gets there and it doesn't really catch on. But I think AR especially is kind of too impressive to do that. But I feel like it still needs that next step.
Did anyone see the over at the Intel booth? They had the Winter Olympics stuff with the VR goggles. It's awesome. It's the best thing I've seen in VR for like a year.
Oh, wow.
Totally recommend it.
Those are 2 endorsements for large exhibits at Central Hall, by the way.
Yeah.
So LG and Intel. Please.
I think with VR, what it needs to do is, you know, something like Oculus Go has to come out, where my dad wants to try out VR, but he has an iPhone, and he's not going to give that up because that's easy to use for him. So he doesn't have the ability to have an Android phone and plug it into a Samsung Gear VR, for example. So the cost is prohibitive just to try that out. So you need a standalone device out there for, you know, about $200, and that's what Oculus Go will do. The Lenovo Mirage is another example with Google Daydream. That could really, you know, access that software that already exists. So it needs, you know, the software to exist and also the hardware that is affordable for someone like my dad who, you know, has, you know, kind of tepid interest in it, you know,
Right.
just mild. But yeah, that is the mass appeal, I think, that is out there, that is waiting for something. You know, they're waiting for a hardware solution.
Well, let's burrow down a little bit. I'm curious what you all have seen. We've talked about potential challenges broadly about AR, VR. What about experiences, right? Experience will drive this. And you talked, David, about the Winter Olympics experience, right? What experience have you all had that really gets you excited within that sector?
Well, I think one of my colleagues, Sharif Smith, she met with, you guys know Meta and Meta glasses. And
Yes.
So what she told me is that I think part of it is the interaction method. Like, so you could have these glasses on you, but how are you going to interact with these holograms or whatever it is that's in front of you? And she tells me, and I believe her, that when she reached out, there was actually some sort of haptic feedback. So you were using gestures, but you were feeling something in return. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Have any of you guys seen the Magic Leap goggles?
Not in person.
Yeah,
I have not seen them in
brand new.
person.
I'm curious about them. I'd like to see if that might change, because for me
Are
the whole
they here or are they
as far-
out in another place?
I'm not sure where they are here, but I want to get to them.
Yeah.
I just know that they're on my to-do list. But I haven't personally been able to. I mean, beyond, you know, riding a roller coaster or stepping off a building and falling, you know, 40 floors, which is pretty, like, that stuff is crazy and scary and interesting and fun. But that's not something I'm going to do on a daily basis. I might look, like when I think of VR, I think of looking at a real estate property or looking at a vacation rental and being able to see it and tour it without leaving my home, without leaving my seat. That's interesting. And that could be a use case for someone like me or the average consumer. But beyond that, if you're not gaming and if you're not really into video and that kind of thing, like, I'm having a hard time seeing where it's going to go.
Yeah, I think the VR stuff that I've seen so far it's entertainment. I mean, there's a little bit of practicality with like house hunting and apartment hunting and stuff like that, but I think it's a really good entertainment platform. On the AR side, we got this box sent to us. I can't remember who it's from, but it was a Star Wars tie-in thing with some AR glasses, and there was a lightsaber. There was Luke's original lightsaber. I'm a big Star Wars nerd, and so I was super excited. I put it on. It was the most boring thing I've done all year.
It can't be boring.
It was terrible.
It cannot be boring.
Because it was AR.
It needed more Boba Fett.
And yeah, like the robots would come at you, and you'd swipe at them with the sword. And then I took the glasses off, and my eyes hurt for like 10 minutes after that. I didn't have that complaint with any of the VR goggles that I've tried. So there's a ways to go on the hardware side.
Matt?
I think when it comes to AR, you know, VR needs that hardware, but the AR needs to look cool. I mean, let's face it, they're just, you know, awful looking. When Snapchat spectacles are the best looking glasses that you can wear that have technology in them, that's a bad sign. So, you know, it reminds me of the old computers that, you know, people say that took up an entire room, and now we have laptops and smartwatches, you know, filed down to the size of a smartwatch. You know, it needs to happen with smart glasses as well and AR glasses. They need to, you know, go from that big, clunky, taking up your entire face look to something that's small and sleek and looks like a pair of Ray-Bans.
Have you all seen the Vuzix yet, which
Yeah.
dropped this way? Okay, so that's where I was going, Mark, was that that's a good-looking pair of sunglasses that includes AR and has Amazon Alexa enabled in it as well.
That's right. So I was impressed by that just because, and that's what the headline was. Like, these are AR glasses that I would actually wear.
And talk to, right.
Because they look like sunglasses, and when you put them on, they kind of feel like Google Glass 2.0. And the interaction is not that difficult. So you sort of just swipe through to go through applications, use 2 fingers on this touchpad on the side to go home.
Yeah.
The Alexa app itself wasn't working just because there was a lot of interference, but I like the idea of being able to talk to Alexa without having to pull my phone out of my pocket.
Sure.
So in a way, AR glasses, if they work the way they should, could become what smartwatches were trying to do, which was to be that smartphone companion.
It's a good line. I think we're all going to steal that line when we
Yeah,
get
I
back.
was like, yeah, it's a great narrative. Yeah. Moving over to a broader sense of innovation and entrepreneurship, has everyone been to Eureka Park yet?
I've not.
Mix.
I skipped it.
Okay. Well, you got 2 days left, right?
It's like, it is, I understand why you might have skipped. I went down there and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. There's so much stuff. It's like a jungle.
Well, you've got to work hard, right?
And a lot of it never goes anywhere. I mean, I just feel like in terms of time spent here, a lot of that stuff dies or is already dead when it's being presented. Like, it's just not...
Harsh.
Sorry, harsh. But don't forget, I am here representing the mass female audience.
Right.
They are way more interested in going upstairs and finding out what's going on in terms of sleep tracking and fertility tracking, and that is
Health,
so
fitness, etc.
and the stress stuff and the Peloton stuff and all, like, that is just, I get personally excited about that, and I know that my readers are going to be more personally excited about that. The other stuff, it feels almost like a waste of time. Apologies to anyone.
I don't know if it's at Eureka Park, but one of the companies that we're going to be seeing later today, so I can't tell you how well it works yet, but they are a startup. They're called Energis, and the idea is wireless charging over a distance. So you all like the idea of dropping our phone on a mat, but that's still plugged into the wall. So what if you could just put your phone on your nightstand and it would charge overnight? They're going to be showing us, I think it's like over 3 meters or something like that, being able to charge your gadgets. And there was rumblings like over the last year that Apple might be partnering with them in the background to bring something to market. Like, there's an example of a startup or a company that I'm excited about, and it would make people's lives easier, not having to worry about charging your stuff.
Right.
And when I go to Eureka Park, I spent a couple of hours there yesterday. Not so much because I wanted to spend a couple hours there, but you literally get lost, and I could not find the exit. And then
got lost, and if you don't speak French, you can't ask directions in that whole section over there.
Yeah, it is like a jungle, like you said. But when you walk down, the little alleyways that they have, you just people see the headphones, they're like, "Ooh, you're going to write a story about me," so that I can be picked up by Apple or Google, and that's really where these companies come into play. They may be bought by a major company, and then their technology is integrated into an iPhone or an Android phone of the future.
Precisely, and that's what I was going to say to you, Laurie, was that from a consumer standpoint, it can be a challenge in Eureka Park because you see a product or an idea, and it may or may not ever hit the market, right? The odds are maybe against it. But it's the implementation that Matt was talking about, whereas a Google and Apple and Amazon, you can see not the product, but the underlying technology and how that would apply within your company, where you're heading. So.
Yeah, it's a lot of the stuff is probably arguably more of use and of interest to us than to the average guy or girl on the street. Our readers really we're a buyer's guide. They want to know what they can buy now, or at least quite soon. And a lot of the stuff in Eureka Park is the next thing. So it's kind of background stuff, which is great to know, but there's only so much time you can sort of lose yourself in that because there's so many other products. But
you may need to squint a little bit to see what you're seeing, right? No, that's very fair. We're just about to wrap up on the half hour. All the way across, and Laura, let's start with you. You've got 3 hours. There we go. 3 hours at CES. What is the one product, company, or area you want to see?
I really want to. I want to do 2 things. Tomorrow, I want to head over to the smart cities because I haven't been, and check that out. And this is more of a personal interest, but I want to see, because of the Bitcoin and blockchain and all of that stuff that's going on, I'm personally curious, less so for the audience, and more so just because I keep hearing these people who tell me I just made $90,000 10 minutes ago, and I'm like, is this for real?
David?
I want to stand over in the Samsung booth by the 146-inch modular TV. I'm going to wait. I have 3 hours, right?
You got
I'm going to
3.
wait until no one's looking.
Don't you have a media pass?
I'm going to go up there, and I'm going to take one of the modules off, and I'm going to see what happens, because they said, they told us on camera, that is the thing that they're going to sell, and consumers will be able to take it apart and add on to it and make it a different size. But they haven't done it in front of anyone yet, and I want to see it happen.
All right. Give me a window just so I can alert security. There may be some action going on around the Samsung booth. Fair point, though.
Yeah.
Right. Joe, what about you?
I am going to go to the Venetian and listen to a £20,000 turntable. So just as a complete break from all of this and AI, I'm not going to talk to it. It's not going to get up and walk around the room. I'm just going to listen to a turntable. But it is a $20,000 one. You know.
What do you want it to play?
That is a good question.
Now we're getting personal. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I wouldn't like to say in front of an audience.
So what I brought up earlier is the fingerprint sensor in the phone. I didn't get a chance to fully check it out and record a video doing it. I just wanted to check it out before this and kind of mention that because I'm on the mobile beat at Tech Radar, and that's my thing. So when that comes out, I think it's going to be a game changer. We'll see if it's out in time for the Samsung Galaxy S9, or it'll be in the Note 9. But I'm going to record a video of that because it is something that every one of our readers wants. They want the fingerprint sensor in the right spot on the front, but they also want that all-screen display. So that is the technology I'm most hyped about.
Oh, love it. So in some senses, biotechnology, right? Biosensing.
Yeah, exactly. They use light, so from
Yeah.
the display to recognize your fingerprints.
That's
awesome.
That's one of the internal conversations we had leading into the show was biotechnology and saying, as bad as it sounds, get the narrative out of this, but using different body parts as identifiers, right? Thumb's a good one, face is another. We'll drop it there. So. Mark, how about you?
So for me, I'd like to second the micro LED TV, the wall. So if you need a partner.
Oh, yeah, let's team up.
So
yeah.
So you're distracting and you're grabbing it.
We could all get in and get big.
But we'll share the footage.
But I think
Thieves.
the only other thing I'll say is that if you're on the fence about like what smart home platform you want to try, whether it's Alexa or Google Home, so the Google Assistant booth out there, the installation, you can see all the different products that it can control, as well as the first smart displays, which have like basically a screen built in at their Amazon Echo Show competitor. And based on our hands-on impressions, we think that they look good, they sound good, and they could give Amazon a run for their money.
Excellent. Great insights this afternoon. Thank you all for giving your valuable time off the floor and us this afternoon. The outlets, Good Housekeeping, Review.com, What HiFi, Tech Radar, Tom's Guide. Mark, Matt, Joe, David, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for spending your time. Have a great CES 2018.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to CES Tech Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can get more information on the CES show at ces.tech. Our show is produced by Tina Anthony. John Lindsay is our sound engineer, and me, I'm Jeff Joseph.